Hi everyone, I'd like to start off by acknowledging the land that I'm speaking from, which is part of the treaty lands and territory of Mississaugas of the Credit, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, and the Wendat peoples. Welcome to ShopTalk's panel on Art of Resistance, brought to you by CineFAM. I am your host, Assis Sethi, CEO of Flyaway Films. ShopTalk panels are brought to you by CineFAM. CineFAM is a not-for-profit organization which focuses on supporting women of color and gender-diverse filmmakers here in Canada. CineFAM holds mentorship activities throughout the year, and we also have an annual film festival. You can find out all great things about CineFAM at cinefam.ca. I'd like to welcome to our panel Zainab and Yasmin. Yasmin and Zainab, thank you and welcome to our show. We're so excited to have you here today. Okay, now getting to the serious part.
Okay.
I want to start off with a very simple question. What does resistance mean to you as a person and as a filmmaker?
For me, resistance as a filmmaker is creating art that is authentic, and that defies norms, to put it very simply. Yeah.
Okay, that's a tough act to follow. I see resistance in filmmaking in a little bit of a different context, and these days it's a bad word. Mm-hmm. Resistance and justice are swear words these days in the current political climate. So the way that I approach it these days is very small steps. And as a producer, I take those very small steps in hiring and in on-set practices, in everything from I prioritize looking for a DP or sound mixer that's a woman or a non-binary person. I'll make sure that we have in our anti-harassment policies additional things about, sexual assault or harassment in depth and what resources they can go to. For example, if that's the case, intimacy coordinators, anti-racist training on set prior to that, build that into the budget. Those are small acts of resistance that I feel are very quiet, but very impactful and will make that ripple effect while we're trying to all kind of button up and be very careful about how we're going about the work, the normal work, the impactful work that we're doing. The small little steps are actually going to help change the culture slowly and kind of under the radar at the moment. I hate that we have to do this right now, but it's the only way that I see I can make a difference that will actually have that kind of impact and maybe role model for the next project, for the next person who sees that happening. So that's kind of how I see resistance in my life too. You want a role model. I have a kid, I want to role model good behavior. I mean, I swear once in a while, but you want to be able to role model that without really drilling it in too hard or too obviously. And I think there are ways to do that, subtle ways.
Yes, thank you for that. That was excellent. I'll add to that in just a wider context, I think beyond being a creative and a filmmaker. I also am the founder of Films with a Cause, which is a consultancy for authentic storytelling practices in the screen sector. And earlier this year, we launched a guide called Back to Ones at Prime Time, which looked at cultural specificity and how using consultants to achieve cultural specificity is beneficial for the production process itself, as well as for the audience and how the audience will receive the processes that can be put in place throughout every phase of a production. What you're saying, anti-racism training, but even having someone from a specific background take a look at a script, make suggestions, working with actors, production design, and so for me the specificity is the word when it comes to resistance, because representation of underserved communities does tend to be very generalized, and that can lead to stereotypes. And for me, I feel like the audience experience of a film is really important, and not just necessarily in the business sense, definitely in that sense, but that experience is so important, of being able to see something that is, you know, authentic, but because it's specific, because there's references to specific experiences that you can relate to or that you've never seen before. So to me, the resistance is in being specific, because a lot of times there is, you know, very tokenistic approaches
that's a good point.
that are not authentic, and audiences are smart and can see right through that.
They're so smart. They're so smart.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great point. I know.
I love the work that you both are doing, which is great. And I like that resistance is also reflective in your work that you do, not just the cause that you're doing, but also in your films, Yasmin. And for you, in your podcast and all the other work you do outside of films. I would love to ask you, when did you realize, as a filmmaker or as a podcaster, when did you realize that this tool, your filmmaking tool, could be used as a tool for resistance?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough one, because you don't really realize finding that moment where you're making the impact. I think that's the one thing I've been chasing my entire career, is when is that time or that moment where you discover that you've impacted someone, or that you've made a change, or that you've actually shifted the way people look at things. For me, so my background is obviously in digital media and then in communication, so that marketing PR brain, as well as that media and journalist brain, has always led me to want to share new information with people, or uncover something that they didn't know. Like, did you know? My favorite thing is, did you know? And if I can do that in filmmaking as well, then I think we're in a place where you're sharing information that they didn't know, and it could be something that's very, I always call it crack. If you can create a crack in someone's pre-existing notions of something, then you've already started bringing the light in. And that shift has already started. Right. And I think, like with gender equity, a lot of the work that I do in gender equity, specifically to push the rights of women and gender diverse folks, I think by exposing that greenhouse gases were actually invented or discovered by a woman, Eugene Newton Foote, and we brought that up in the No Credit podcast that I produced, rather than the dude who got his name in a comment. I think that might have shifted someone's mind and saying, well, what else was invented or created by a woman or gender diverse person? I think that's really powerful, and that I've had people come up to me and say, I didn't know that. That's maybe where I know I did. I'm doing right for the people that I'm helping represent and expose and share their stories. And I think that's when I know I'm making that. But it does take that person to tell you, like, oh my God, the impact of this on me made such a difference. Or, oh, I loved that you were, spotlighting scientists. Like, we never get a good rep, or I don't know, these days science you can't even talk about. But that's an interesting, you just don't know until you do, and until someone brings it up or someone validates that. And it's unfortunate we're in a place where we kind of seek that validation, but you won't know if you can keep going on. I don't know. It's those moments where you get to interact with your audience or people that have experienced and shared, appreciated your content, and then you're like, oh, I think I'm on the right track, right? Because gut-wise, you're on the right track, but it does take that community to be like, yeah, keep going. Mm-hmm. You got this, right? And so I think that's really part and parcel in how we define that and how we're making that resistance, I guess. Yeah, I think, filmmaking and social purpose work have always been very close to me since I was very young. And so, even from middle school and high school, I was always grappling with, putting on events for nonprofits and, but then also, just creating videos and writing scripts with my siblings and friends. And so I always had this kind of dual
passion, but just struggle to, bridge my creativity with my, desire for seeking justice. So I think Films with a Cause was definitely a way that I was able to explore both at the same time. But then my first film was a documentary called From Syria to Hope, which I directed, produced, edited with no budget. And the screenings that I had for those films at film festivals or community-based screenings, I think exactly what you're saying, like when you're having those experiences with the audiences, I had refugee and Syrian audiences and audiences of people that had been doing that resettlement work within the communities, and I had created that film alongside those communities as well. But I think, again, what I was referring to earlier, the impact of seeing yourself represented on screen is so huge. And it's that, and it's what you're saying as well with people who are not familiar with these circumstances, actually being able to have that emotional experience through the film. I think it's just such a unique opportunity that film brings that I don't really feel you can do in many other art forms, because it's a fully immersed emotional experience into a different world. And so that's why I love, doing this. And similarly for the film that I'm in the festival with this year, One Day, it's yes.
So exciting.
Thank you. It's about an Indo-Caribbean Muslim teenager who daydreams to find her inner confidence. And it was a lot of fun to create, but the buzz that was created online was so exciting and a little bit unexpected. But again, it was just because communities had never seen it ever. And so the Muslim Indo-Caribbean girls online who wear hijab, it's like you think that that's a really specific small niche, but it's not. It's people from honestly around the world have seen reels of this film and have gotten so excited because it's such a new thing to actually see that specificity, which creates that stronger emotional experience for people to resonate with that or to learn about what that experience is even like. And so I think for me it's that double side of the empowerment of representation for communities that haven't seen themselves, and then a bit of like that education piece in a way of oh, this is what this is like, and what that can lead to for someone being able to support a community that they didn't know enough about.
Right? Like, Yasmin and Shonda Rhimes are both my heroes.
Wow!
And
oh my God!
And so when I saw with Shonda Rhimes, like the work that Yasmin does is really moving that mark, because we're seeing people that we don't normally see in circumstances like high schoolers. Yes. We don't see that very often. Just like having the same old issues that all teenagers have. Shonda Rhimes did something, she's done many things in a lot of her shows, but in Grey's Anatomy, the one that stood out to me when I knew that we could have justice, we could push for justice and resistance on screen, not just the women in STEM angle. That's my favorite part about Grey's Anatomy, but we had a non-binary love interest.
Yes.
That changed my world, and I said, that was done so, like, not casual. It was very intentional, but it was done so masterfully, beautiful writing, and just such a nice, an amazing story arc, like a smart story arc. And it was like audiences took it and enjoy and appreciated it. And we realized that was a movement. And so when we see things like that, and when we push the mark, when we are nervous to do it, and we'll do it anyway, I think it's received well. And you have to be prepared when it's not. Right? We have to be prepared for both, because in this climate, or whoever sees it, like, maybe your parents are not really happy about what you just did. And that's a big pressure for a lot of storytellers. But resistance is the fact that we still have to tell that story. That honor that you provide that story. That story has to be told come hell or high water. even if your parents are pissed off about it, or your family one of your family members doesn't agree with the way that you're doing it. Like I have family members in my head, barking things. And you just have to keep moving, right? You have to tell that story. And I think there's that responsibility we have as storytellers to really honor that.
Yeah, I think art and film is really like being a filmmaker. I feel like is a responsibility, especially it's a privilege,
right?
Yes, and I think when you do have access to communities that are not well understood in a mainstream sense, like you do have an element of responsibility if that's what you feel called to do. To bring those stories into a space where people are able to resonate, even if they don't know that person in their real life. And so, I agree, and it does come with a lot of sacrifice.
It does. I see you've been there. You do that too. You really bring up these stories that people might never have known about, and because you were able to tell that story, they now know about it, and their life is, even if they don't admit it, I think, there's that crack. Right? And so that's impact.
Yeah, and if you know that you have access to a community and you're one of the only individuals that could tell that story, how special is it that you get to be the one to bring that unique perspective into the world, Yeah.
Absolutely. So talking about films and messages, how do you balance messaging with artistry when you're making a film, or with your films as well that you've done? There's always a message. There's something very important, just how we're talking about resistance. There's very important that everyone needs to learn, almost like sparking conversations after you've watched that film. How do you balance your voice as a director, your vision as a director, with the message that you want to give?
Yeah, I think it's a very important question. And I also teach. I do workshops for young students from middle school, high school, and also within Muslim communities as well. And within a lot of those communities, the kids are really passionate about wanting to tell stories with strong messaging, right? I think a lot of those kids are going through so much right now, and they really want to say something, with a strong message. But what I always try and gear them towards is focusing more on the human experience and creating a story that has real emotional resonance, because that is how the messaging will come through. It's more like, be an example with your character or be an, right? Rather than having to spell everything out, because that is what art is about. You need to create a story that will resonate because people can understand the universal human experiences, and it just happens to be in a context that, like we were saying, is a different context, but then you can relate to the character's fear of, speaking out, or for me, it's really just about creating strong emotional responses in audiences, and then they can decide if that's enough for them to go and, do something with that.
That's it. And so I love that perspective, because I was like, Yasmin's definitely going to have this perspective, because mine was a completely different perspective. Coming from journalism, coming from communications, we got to be very clear on what the message is and what I want you to do with it. And so coming from that world, it's hard to reconcile the art, because sometimes we lose that art. There's no art involved in that type of communications until you infuse it. What I love about filmmaking is the ability to create that read between the lines feel in the audience, where they're like, she's saying something here, right? And giving them that opportunity to think about it. I love that, because makes it such a warm medium, and makes it such an opportunity for the audience to see themselves in that role and be part of that. And I know not all filmmakers like to make relatable characters. Watching Succession, I didn't relate to any of the characters, right? But that's a point. That's also that's a message that they're trying to make there. I I do admire and I love working with filmmakers who have a very clear story and the messaging comes through very like, if we miss it, you got to watch it again. And I'm okay with that. Like that's the kind of stuff I want to produce, the smart work that really has that message of role modeling, where you have those characters that carry that torch. Because you don't want it to be clear. And that's what the impact campaign is for, right? When you want it to be clear, then you have an impact campaign afterwards where you're sharing that and you can make it a multimedia campaign. And I believe that there's space for all of that. Like coming from the background that I do, I believe films have that ability to kind of be very subtle and be very artistic. And then you'll have everything around it, all the channels around it supporting that to ensure that if anyone missed what we were trying to say, this is what we're trying to do, and here's how you can be a part of it.
Right? So. And you also were, we're talking about role models and characters, but and then Succession. I also think that it's not about creating like relatable characters that you see the best parts of yourself in. I also love
you see the worst part.
I also love very
like
flawed characters.
Right?
Yes, where you see like the worst parts of human nature.
Like, oh,
but then you're able to associate to that in your own way, whether it's something like, oh, I remember a time where I did this thing and I felt guilt and shame around it, and
or maybe I reacted to someone who did that thing.
And maybe I didn't process it well, and so I think as long as it really just any kind of emotional response or connection that you can create emotionally to art, I think can hopefully lead to those other conversations where you can have an impact campaign and let that bleed into other spaces like socio-political spaces.
Like it is a 360, like art is that 360 and we should give it that time to breathe. Like I don't believe that you should create a film and then just let it hit the festival scene and then the broadcaster and then we're done. I believe those messages, all the work and the honor that we give our crews and the story and the cast should be able to continue through campaigns, through lots of opportunities. I can't help it.
No, but it's everyone. This is another thing that sort of frustrates me sometimes when I do the work I do with Films with a Cause. Yes, let me go at it. A successful project and again, that business element and the way that you strategize, how it reaches audiences and the marketing is not separate from impact or social purpose work or specificity and cultural representation. It's all the same thing. Right? And there's so many producers missing out on, deeper audience relationships because they don't value that conversation, or it's seen as something like you might think about like a year after you're in the festivals, but it's something you need to think about in development because even I took that approach with this short film and it worked exactly how I thought it would.
Your casting call,
remember even from the very, very early start, I was like, I want to have this framework, even if it's a short, I want to have that in every part of creating this film. From who I choose to cast to the cultural consultants. I'm Indo-Caribbean and Muslim, but I had other consultants who grew up with those communities in ways that were different than me, and they brought so much more to like the script and the production design than I could have never done that on my own. And that allowed me to reach their audiences as well. Authentically, because I am able to know I can't possibly reflect an entire community on my own, and I want this film to access wider communities within the Indo-Caribbean space, and so I'm going to bring in other Indo-Caribbean people who already have those established audiences so that it can reach them. And it worked, and we have like a viral reel, and it worked. So
Asis, you did it too, right? You had consultants on your short film that came in, right, to consult on the stuff the type of content that you were producing, the story.
Actually, on both of my recent shorts, One was on postpartum depression. We had a therapist, a consultant, and then for the basketball one, we had like athletes.
That's it. Like it's important from the get-go.
That's what. We talk about authenticity. That's how, that's how it works.
That's how you're going to.
I think it should be like a mandatory thing.
I would agree.
Make it mandatory.
Organizations busting its butt about, right? Creating those frameworks, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, we're still in a film industry this is how we've always done it. So we're still working within that framework, and we're trying to kind of color outside the lines a little bit. Slowly, it's happening, but we're taking 5 steps back every time something shifts in the world, climate. So it's been a bit of a challenge, I think, to be able to pull in new framework or kind of erase old framework and put new stuff in there, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
slowly. We can't burn it all down yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
One thing I want to touch on is our industry, the Canadian film and television industry. Whether someone agrees or not, there's still tokenism and there's still systemic barriers. How have you faced the challenges that has come with this for your projects or for yourself as filmmakers? How do you face those challenges and how do you overcome them?
I have a big pet peeve I want to bring up in the film industry, and I think there's a huge gatekeeping situation in the Canadian, mainly in the film industry in general, film and entertainment industry. But that's not unique to this industry. It exists in media, it exists in tech. I think I reduce it down to jargon and accessibility. When there is jargon and when there's a use of words, glossary of terms that dictates a lot of the work that you get to do in that industry, it is used as a gatekeeping mechanism. If you don't know what a blah 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 report is, or you don't know what a specific a piece of a camera that attaches to the adapter is, that separates you from those who have been doing it for so long and do it. That's how they've always been doing it, and someone who's coming into it, or maybe someone who knows the world but maybe doesn't know that gimbal, right? And I think that pushes away a lot of folks, especially women and gender diverse folks of color, because we already feel like outsiders. So when we're coming into a space where we're just like, okay, I gotta really figure this out, that adds an additional barrier. And so that barrier I found is just such a microaggression that exists in this industry, a lot of industries, when people are coming in or trying to figure it out and find their footing, that I think we can do away with. It needs to be more accessible. I think people need to be welcomed, feel belonging, and that's that key part that I don't think we figured out yet. In the Canadian system, there's still that separation of, oh, are you a filmmaker? You went to film school? Oh, okay, come on in. Oh, you did other things? I don't have a category for you. Okay, well, we'll figure it out, And so I think we're shifting. We are shifting. Like, I know that people are opening their minds up a little bit more, but we're still very conservative in our way of, like, when we talked about films, they go from film to festival to broadcaster. We're seeing it, some people are seeing it very linearly. I find the gatekeepers are still like that. I think those are mass barriers for folks who want to see it differently and try to push to tell stories in different ways. We desperately need that innovation. We need it to be different so that we can move forward and progress and tell more of these stories. So I think I have big beef with the industry and how we're still, we're hitting against constant, like, we've always done this. This is how we've always done it. It's very apparent in Canada. How we're shifting that is one producer at a time, one director at a time, one crew member at a time. And I think one funder, I'm going to speak to the funders, one funder at a time. And each funder that can make that change and make that shift and push forward and get the buy-in in their organization is doing a huge service to filmmakers and storytellers. So I think those are the barriers that we're facing. I've faced it. As a person of color, as a woman of color in leadership positions, I have to brush it off. I've been undermined so much across industries, so it's not a new thing in entertainment. There are very small moments where you can't even, like, prove it, but you feel it. And you're like, all right, okay, move on. Yoga, you know, like you just breathe through it and then you move and you keep busting it. Like that's the resistance I do. I just keep busting it. I mean, I'm tired, but, I know we'll talk about that too, but yeah, that's my long and short of it.
Yeah, I think, you know, from when I first started working in this industry, I realized that I was going to have the most support from mentors who come from my own backgrounds, and that's where I would feel the safest. So I was really, really, really lucky to have my first job in the industry be working as Charles Officer's assistant from
nice.
20,
Woo!
from 20, I think.
Shout out.
I think I met him in 2017 or 2018, and then I was with his production company for a number of years. And I think, I mean, I was so grateful that he was the one that chose to support me that early on, because at that stage when I was a student, I was just trying to think about what I wanted to do when I graduated and see if this was even within the realm of possibility. And so I was, you know, trying to approach different possible mentors, women, and you know, I'm Caribbean, and I related to the way that Charles wanted to tell stories, and you know, even his value system and how he sees the world. And I'm so grateful for that, because had any of those other mentors taken me on, I might have not ended up in such a position where I could feel like I could be myself, and I might have had experiences that would have made me like shut down. But I think,
or like assimilate.
Yeah, or assimilate, exactly. Yeah. And then from that, and then I eventually ended up using my degree, which was great, and being the advocacy lead at BIPOC TV and Film, which was, you know, really amazing. And again, just like allowed for me to have the space within the industry that was very much grounded in community and supported by, it's just about everyone wanting to support one another with the resources that they have. And of course, from there, it was interesting, you know, learning how to finance projects and feature projects or broadcast projects in the Canadian system.
Interesting is the word you chose, eh?
Yeah, I was.
Interesting.
It was interesting. Well, because I personally, I come from, I would say, somewhat of a privileged background where I could have the time to, you know, go to an event I was invited to last minute and meet someone that could give me an opportunity, and I don't have to hustle off to a night job or whatnot to pay for school. All of these little elements of privilege really helped me to, I don't think I could have ended up where I did if it wasn't for, you know, I'm fully aware of that. Yeah. But, you know, in the financing process, when I was co-producing a doc and just seeing, you know, what cash flow actually looks like, you're fully financed, and then you see what actually is there for you to pull from when you have a deadline that you have to meet for a broadcaster. You know, I'm actually able to go back to my resources, but then I realize that if I didn't have that, I couldn't do this. Yeah. So I'm like, wow, I'm truly one of the privileged that are able to do this. And this is like a story that was actually able to get through and get greenlit, you know? So that just really shocked me, honestly, because I meet so many younger filmmakers who have aspirations in the documentary space and whatnot in the Canadian system. And now that I've gone through the process, it's hard for me to, you know, give some kind of like advice around that, because it's a lot of the times you can do the best that you can do, and you can do everything right, but if you don't have the means to sustain yourself when you're, you know, developing a larger project in the Canadian system, you just can't do it. No, you just can't. You have to have. I don't have a solution.
Yeah, that full-time job. Or that night job. You have.
But even then, the expectation of what you need to provide, it doesn't align. We were just talking about this. It doesn't align.
Filmmaking is not for the faint of heart, or the financially, like, if you're looking for this as a way to finance your life, to meet your bill, like to pay your bills, it's not that. It's just not that. And that's a huge barrier. Economic barrier is probably the number one barrier in this industry.
Of course.
Because it's who are the folks you know and who have you networked with. It is who you know. It sucks. It's the right. It's the worst like cliche. Like it's
But
who you
even
know, but
then,
and then what level you're like what already like we're privileged. I always say I'm privileged. The fact that I can speak English as a native speaker, I say right off the bat, I know. I have immigrant parents. Like I know how challenging that was for them. Right off the bat, that set them on a different path than me. And so that's like these are small, tiny barriers. They're not small and tiny.
No.
They're very real and very big. And so yes, we do have the privilege of actually being able to be in these spaces.
But even so, then you can have the privilege that you and I have, and the communication skills and the network. But then when you get to that point.
Don't get me started on that.
It's still not enough. Not unless you have that financial backing, to be honest, that allows you to go months without any funds at all, and you have to be okay with that. And if you're not, then it won't work.
You're out. You got to figure. You have to find another way then, right?
Yeah, and that's the part that I don't think is spoken about, because it's not the fun part to speak about, right?
It's the most challenging part.
Yes, but it's the realist.
It's like follow your dreams, but make sure you have something to that runway. Because if you don't have that runway, or you can't pay your bills, filmmaking is not not going to be fun. It's going to be a survival technique, right? And that's really tricky. It's very tricky.
If you were able to change one thing in the Canadian film and television landscape that we're in to make it more inclusive, hint, I'm using words which might be like bad words in the next few months, but to make it more inclusive, what would it be?
I'm trying to develop a new stream of funding that involves women and gender diverse investors investing in women and gender diverse creators. We need a new stream of funding to bring more money into telling these stories. Whether that's through creating investor profiles, whether that's through a program that introduces the two groups. I just don't think the funding cycles are as, they could use a little bit, an additional stream, let's say, to be as political as I possibly can. We could use an additional stream that's available to folks who want their stories told, and we have investors and folks that maybe aren't well versed in the filmmaking space, and they want to learn more about it as an investment opportunity. The ROI is not great, but there are different ways of providing ROI, especially through that impact work. So that is what I want to change, and I want to see it change, and I want to help support it and nurture it, is that new stream of revenue, because I know the money's out there, of telling these stories, because art matters and art can change the world.
Yes.
Right? And so that's my hope and my dream.
I think, there are different phases to what needs to happen in order for this industry to be inclusive. But the reason why at Films with a Cause we started with research on the use of specificity consultants is because with the research that we've done, this is what we believe to be that first step, and that first phase is just seeing where the industry is at right now is so far away from the conversation of even hiring appropriately, even hiring in key creative positions appropriately. When I was on stage at prime time, I don't know what really got through, and so with the Back to One's guide, what essentially the Cole's notes is that specificity consultants come from the communities that that are equity deserving communities, but they also have that industry understanding and that academic perspective. So sort of like these three pillars that, you know, come together to serve different parts of the industry and different phases of a production to eventually lead producers into that understanding of how to work with communities for their own benefit, and not just for the purpose of inclusivity, but so that they can have better systems in place, just in terms of, you know, like technicality, as well as accessing those audiences for successful marketing plans, and to, you know, get those audiences behind the projects that can be, you know, really the backbone of taking it through into a successful and long-lasting distribution campaign. Right? So yeah, for me, it's, I think, and again, I want to emphasize that it is, I think it's a multi-phase thing, and I'm not saying in any way that consultants should ever replace hiring and key creative roles. I think that that's essential, but there are so many execs and producers in this space that don't even know how to have that conversation yet. Like, that's where we are right now, you know?
I agree.
Yeah,
that leadership, right? That leadership conversation. I don't know if a lot of folks in this
it's
space
very
have
uncomfortable for a lot of folks, and it makes sense, you know, it makes sense, but I think what's important to know is that we all have knowledge gaps. You know, everyone has knowledge gaps, no matter where you come from, no matter what kind of privileged space you come from, and I think we all just have to acknowledge that, you know, no one is, you know, better than the other, and it's not that someone is telling you how you have to change or how you have to run things differently. It's just knowing that we have knowledge gaps, and if you are open to exploring that could, you know, help you create more success in your own projects. You know,
I think in as leaders, like as a producer, my company, Radiate Media, I need to make the folks that I work with very much understand that I am leading people. We're leading people. Producers are those people who lead people in, I mean, we're working with directors to do this. We are people leaders. When we are working with people and collaborating, you need to know certain things about what the needs of these people are. We can't, after a 10-hour day, not care about how people get home. We need to care about these things, about their caretaking, like their babysitting, caretaking, all these things come into play, and these are things that framework that we need to build out when we're running these shows, when we're running these projects, so that folks feel supported and folks feel like they can stay in the industry. And I think inclusion is to ensure that people can stay in this industry. Because I know a lot of us want to leave because it's not conducive to caretaking responsibilities, to the way that we want to set our boundaries in our life and work-life balance. So to make it inclusive as possible is to actually see people and to create frameworks where we can actually make them feel supported and want them to be like, I need you in this industry and I need you to stay. So here's how I'm going to make it a little bit easier for you to work through this industry and learn in this industry. So yeah, I think it's important. These are all phased approaches. It's going to take a little while, but we're going to keep working. We're going to keep pushing.
We're going to keep pushing until it happens. And hopefully it will. Hopefully the next generation will see it happen.
That's a overall model for a little while.
Sure.
Awesome. This was such an insightful conversation. Thank you so much, Yasmin. Thank you so much, Zainab. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so
Thanks
much
for having us.